Well, I spent time studying the work and considering the composition and the fact that the rainforest is a very dense area of trees, and in order to convey the rainforest, I felt as if I needed to be looking at the scene through trees, not through a cleared space. So I felt it was important to put a major tree in the foreground. Now I've used what I consider my secondary pastels, not my favourite ones, my range of the soft pastels, not the extra soft ones. That's my Art Spectrum, Rembrandt, that collection, Unison, and I decided to use them in much the same way as gouache by using them wet. So I've just applied water to the paper here with my brush, and it's emulsifying the pastel and allowing me to blend it, which is creating quite an interesting pattern on the tree trunk. It's rather nice working with pastels wet. I've never really used wet pastels very much in the past. I've only ever used them dry. But this is very satisfying. It reminds me very much of oil painting. I think I could quite get the hang of working wet pastels and then just touching them up with a little dry. I'm needing to get a good contrast of light and shade onto this foreground tree. And I also have to watch that I don't end up with what looks like a cross in the middle of the painting, so I'll be changing the shape slightly. At the moment, this tree is almost looking to be at right angles with the log that's over the water. So there'll be a little bit of a directional change as I develop this. I'm thinking in terms of a stringy bark eucalypt here. So there'll be a lot of bark hanging off of the tree. I know that people outside of Australia will be familiar with our stringy bark. So I've been to California and seen quite a lot of our stringy barks in forests there. So I believe they've been introduced around the world quite a lot. They're a lovely tree. Now, as I develop the foreground, of course, I'm needing to go back in and develop some of the middle distance, particularly the girl on the log. She'll need a little bit more definition, otherwise she's going to look a bit ghostly. Now, the colours that are in the water, in the sky, they can be reflected off a tree trunk. The tree trunk is polished and reflective. So everywhere you have a colour in a painting, you look around to see where else that colour might belong. Now this time I'm using a product, it's not alcohol, it's actually an antiseptic that's sold that has in chemists, and it has alcohol in it. You can't actually buy straight alcohol in Australia, but you can buy antiseptic products that have a high rate of alcohol in them. Alcohol emulsifies pastel the same way water does, but it will dry faster. You can also buy alcohol type products for Copic pens to thin down marker pens, but it's a lot more expensive than what you can buy in the chemist. I have seen pastelists painting with wine and vodka to emulsify the pastels. I haven't tried either. You can see pastel's rather nice to paint with. As I said, this is the first time I've actually used this technique. I'd be very wary of using liquids that have a lot of alcohol in, because of course alcohol evaporates, which is of course why pastelists use it, so that they can have it evaporate quickly and have dry paper. But of course that's also getting in the air. I prefer to work with as few pollutants as possible, so I'm more likely to emulsify with water and allow a little time for it to dry. You can always pick up a hairdryer to speed up the drying if you need to. Now this is going to be a good way for me to use up the pastels that I don't like as much. Here I am using gouache again. This is from the tube, a bit of Chinese white. I've mixed a little bit of cadmium yellow into it. Again, gouache is often called liquid pastel, so it's all interchangeable. Pastel is basically pure pigment with very little binder, so it can be emulsified with water to become like a water paint. It can be emulsified with spirits and become almost like an oil paint. Again, as you develop your foreground, you need to go back and touch up your background a little bit. I'm wanting to get a lot of raggedness of the bush into this scene. They're not refined trees. In a rainforest, people haven't gone in there and pruned and cleaned up. It's natural to see a lot of fallen debris, a lot of bark litter laying around. And this is where I can change the direction so that I don't have a exact crossing point between the main tree and the log behind. I can change the direction of this tree slightly as I work. Again, a little orange on the tree, a little orange onto the dress of the girl. Nothing happening in isolation. Here I'm blending the pastel with a paper stump. So some places I blended it with water or the alcohol-based spirit, and sometimes I blended it with a pastel stump. That's how I've mainly worked the pastel dry. But as I said, I have a huge range of soft pastels that I don't personally like to work dry with because of, well, they're harder and I find they apply more, you need more pressure to apply them. They don't blend as nicely as the extra soft pastels. So I'm thinking that I will use those in the future, use them up by working with them in a wet form. It'll be a good way of using a product that I haven't liked for the purpose that they are normally intended, for the working dry. Now, I'm not just making this tree up out of my head. I went through all my sketches from all my travels and studied them. I've picked out from those sketches about 5 different sketches that had similarities to the area that I was working in this painting. And then I went through those until I picked the tree that I felt worked best with this theme. So I'm actually working from a sketch that I've done in the past. So it's a real tree that I've seen in nature in a similar situation. Now I'm getting a lot more depth into this work by adding this tree. I'm pleased that I made the decision to do it.